Friends in the Corner podcast. Stories and topics from around the state of Kentucky. All right, everybody. Welcome back to Friends in the Corner podcast. Stories and topics around the state of Kentucky, here for a special episode this week. If you heard last week, we had a preview of the NFL draft. Well, the NFL draft has come and gone for 2020, and now we're going to be doing our review of the show. And we have a very special guest on to help us review this past weekend's NFL draft, and I'm excited to introduce him here. Returning to the show for a record sixth time, from Middletown, Kentucky, a graduate of the Christian Academy of Louisville and the University of Kentucky, the man that is the cream in your coffee, the butter in your biscuit, your grandmother's favorite punter, husband, son, dog father, the Shield, Max Godby.
Oh my goodness, the introductions get better and better every time, Dan. You talk about I try so hard, and one thing I've really focused on in my spirit make me feel prideful every single time I come on your show. So thank you for letting me sin a little bit more.
Absolutely, man. Well, hey, we're happy to have you back on here, and we're happy to talk about the NFL draft that happened this weekend. We actually last year did a NFL draft review for the 2019 draft, and I thought since that show was so successful last year, I'd love to bring you back on to do this show. So really excited to have you on, Max, just to talk about some of the boys in blue that we saw go this year and some of the potential they have. We want to try to talk a little bit about these different players that went, including Lynn Bowden. But before we get into them, let's talk about last year's draft. Because when you came onto my show last year, we talked about the potential there was for guys like Josh Allen and Benny Snell and all these other guys that went. So I kind of want to just talk a few about them because some of them had an awesome season this last year. Josh Allen, you look what he did down in Jacksonville for a team that really had nothing to play for. Benny got to share a few snaps, and he got his he got a little recognition for his fancy little mouthpiece. But I think the guy I was most excited for was Lonnie Johnson out of Texas. Man, going to the playoffs, getting a touchdown on the eventual Super Bowl champion. So, yeah, man. And that clipped again. I just wanted to say it again. The guy I was most excited for was probably Lonnie Johnson, who made it to the playoffs, got a touchdown against the eventual Super Bowl champions, Kansas City Chiefs. So how do you feel this team how do you feel about this last class that just came out and how they were able to do this last season in the NFL?
I mean, the way that this team, that class has done just extremely well. And I don't mean well by the fame and accolades that Josh Allen's gotten, but Benny Snell just being a reliable just horse in the backfield and being dependable. You look at Mike Edwards and the way he's been playing down in Tampa. I mean, just being an absolute ball hawk. Lonnie Johnson, who's probably the surprise of the entire draft last year. I mean, this was a guy that was in rotation at UK. He was not a starter. He was getting in on the rotation, really balled out during the combine, really trained well, showed off his speed during pro day, got drafted higher than what anyone ever expected, and he made the most of that opportunity and ran with it. He's had himself an excellent year. And I know the question's just been on last year, but you look at guys like Bud Dupree. Bud Dupree gets the franchise tag for Pittsburgh. And you talk about a guy that's just been an absolute chaotic monster in the backfield, and for anything coming into an outside run game of him being able to just seal off any sort of forward motion. You look at Larry Warford, which Larry wasn't a part of the Mark Stoops recruit and develop, but He's still a UK guy that has made a lot of money being a really good offensive lineman. I mean, you look at the way that probably Avery Williamson's going to come back and be the Jets and be probably that power contender for the Jets. You've got so many UK players out there that are just doing so well for themselves. Gosh, I can't even believe I almost forgot about him. Zadarius Smith. Smith has been just a staple to Green Bay. And for a fan base like Green Bay, I knew he would be such a good fit there because of the way that fans just adore him and the way that he's able to interact with those fans. He's done extremely well, made himself a lot of money. But the thing about Zadarius Smith that not a lot of people know is how charitable he is as well. I mean, I think it was last Friday from 11 o'clock to 2 o'clock, he bought everyone in Greenville, I think it was Greenville, Alabama, where he's originally from. He bought everyone in his hometown at that Pizza Hut one large pizza.
Wow.
During all this with COVID-19. Did it again this weekend also for his hometown. That dude is so thankful for what he has, and he's been such a good example for his son as a role model for his son, and just for what you're supposed to do in the NFL as well when you're given that kind of opportunity. And then I'm going to go ahead and count it. What about Austin McGinnis also to the LA Rams?
Oh,
it's not a draft, but he's a part of this class now.
Think about this, which, RIP XFL, but him getting the opportunity to go and do his stuff there to eventually get an opportunity. I've been secretly rooting for Austin McGinnis. Not secretly. I have been rooting for Austin McGinnis to get an opportunity in the NFL for the last couple of years. So it's awesome to finally see him get that chance.
Exactly. And it's the thing is, it's shocking. It's shocking for someone who makes millions and millions of dollars to look at a player and go if they're good or not. A lot of players, it's really hard to do. That's really hard to do. To judge if Josh Allen or judge Lonnie Johnson's going to be an absolute stud in the secondary in the NFL. Who was the guy at the Texans that was able to look at that and go, we need to take a shot on him? Same thing with Mike Edwards, for Logan Stenberg, or even the guys that went undrafted this year of Calvin Taylor and Ahmad Wagner, who will probably get a great opportunity and probably make a roster. You look at guys like that. Someone was paid millions of dollars to get into a situation and be like, we need to take a chance on this guy. But for the life of me, of all the positions on the field, you can either kick a football or you can't. I mean, when it gets right down to it, you can either kick it or you can't kick it. There's a little bit more that goes into it. But if you can't kick it, you can't kick it. And Austin McGinnis has shown over and over and over and over again that he can kick 55-yarders with ease. We were playing against Tennessee my senior year, and I was on field goal. I played the little wing position, which sucked because you got yourself completely stretched out like no other. You have no any sort of basically any sort of position to be able to stop anyone at this point. So you get a little safety that gets mad at you and just run up and just push you and you just fall down. And we were lining up against Tennessee for a 56-yard field goal. 56-yard field goal. Not even guys in the NFL can make 56-yard field goals. And Austin McGinnis, I remember turning around and looking at him, and he looks at the holder and goes, yeah, I've got this. And just walks in, and all of a sudden, I do my little thing. I jab. I fall down because someone pushed me, and I hear the ball kick, and from the sound of it, I was like, man, he's going to miss this one. And I'm able to get myself up, stare, and, I mean, it was right down the middle, 56 yards, had room, dude. That ball could have probably been made at 60, 62. I mean, the dude's a stud. The dude's a winner, and I'm finally glad of all the organizations in the NFL LA Rams is finally the one that got a brain after 5 years and said, okay, maybe he is as good as they say he is.
I don't want to jinx him, but I do think the LA Rams have probably found their kicker for the next 5 to 6 years at least in Austin McGinnis. Hopefully for longer than that. But I think he has finally gotten himself an opportunity to start a long, long NFL career. So, well, we're excited for Austin McGinnis and everything he's had coming on this year after playing a little bit of time in the XFL, RIP. And it's hard, man. It's really hard. I was really rooting for the XFL.
It literally took a worldwide pandemic to kill the XFL. That was the only thing. That was truly the only thing that could do it. So anyway.
Well, it's kind of ironic because when we did our draft show last year, Max, it was like 4 weeks after the AFF failed.
Yeah.
And then here we are with the XFL. And we talked about last time, like, well, maybe something will happen with the XFL for some of these guys. And, well, here we are now. But we're not here to talk about the AF or the XFL. We're here to talk about the NFL. And we've got definitely some big-time players that have gone in this draft this year that we're excited to talk about. We want to talk about all these UK players. But there's really only one name that has gotten talked about a lot from this past draft, and I feel like we need to talk about him too, especially for me. I'm very excited to talk about this guy since he's an Ohio boy like myself. But the very first pick in this draft was LSU's free player because he was at Ohio State first. But the Ohio boy from Athens, Ohio, Joe Burrow, returns to Ohio to save the Bengals franchise. And I'm very excited to talk about Joe Burrow here. And, he did have an opportunity to play in the SEC and show his worth and won a Heisman there. So what's your thought on this pick for the Bengals picking Joe Burrow on the first pick?
I mean, it was an obvious, like, it was very, very obvious.
Mm-hmm.
But it was good. It was good. And I'm just glad the Bengals organization didn't mess it up. Because I honestly thought at the last second, someone's going to tempt them with like 4 fifth-round picks and be like, well, that's almost like a first-round pick, and go and do it. Nothing surprises me out of the Bengals organization anymore. But to see them take Joe Burrow, you see quarterbacks that go in the first round and go to non-powerhouse teams, and they get real quiet. A Baker Mayfield, when he went to the Browns, got quiet. He talked a lot when he was at Oklahoma. He won his Heisman. We got quiet afterwards. Johnny Manziel went to the Browns as well. Went quiet. Went really quiet. Even Andy Dalton, when he went to the Bengals, quiet. Joe Burrow is the only one that has gone the first overall pick and looked at it as an opportunity as, you know what? I haven't had a losing season since I was 5 years old. I don't intend to start now. And that is a freaking winner. Now, if Joe Burrow does not get an offensive line around him, if they do not build an offensive lineman around him, he won't last 3 years. But if they get an offensive line, if the Bengals organization invests in a really good offensive line, he's already got the weapons at receiver. Oh, my gosh. The Bengals will win a Super Bowl within 5 to 6 years if they do invest in that offensive line. I truly do believe if they would have taken Tua, I would have been like, Tua is dead. Tua's not going to do anything. The Bengals suck. The Bengals are trash. But because Joe Burrow is Joe Burrow, and because that dude's got a way to visualize success and bring it into fruition, I truly do believe it. I think this dude is one of those Bradys, is one of those guys that it's a chip on his shoulder that he went the first round, first overall pick, and that they didn't call him sooner because the Bengals told him that he was going to be their first overall pick 2 weeks ago, that this was already a done deal. That's who we were going to take. And I feel like in Joe Burrow's mind, it's, well, you should have called me the day after the national championship game, so you all don't believe in me. That's what you're saying. I think that's his mentality. He's got such a bone to pick with people, and he backs up all his trash. I mean, the dude's a trash talker like no other. I showed Ashley last night the video of him. He's basically run up the score on Vandy 52-10 at, I think it was this point in the game, and came over to the sideline to the defensive lineman that was talking trash to him and walked right up to him in the middle of his defensive huddle, called him trash in front of all of his teammates, and walked away. I mean, that dude, when it comes to his level of talking trash and his way of backing it up, dude, I truly do believe he's the real deal.
So, and that's actually something I want to ask you about. And you already made a Brady comparison there. But last week, we were doing the preview, I had Angelo Carriero on from ESPN Radio, and he was kind of talking to me about that he said when we talk about Burrow's ceiling, he was going to say it's about up there with Aaron Rodgers, which at the time sounded better than it does now. But he mentioned that he could be an elite quarterback in this league, up there with the Rodgers and the Bradys. So do you feel that same way about Burrow as well?
I don't know. I don't know if it's, I mean, he's extremely accurate. He's got a great arm. He shows what he can do, especially when he's got, I mean, he had the nation's best offensive line in front of him, which, I mean, give that offensive line props for that, because, you know, that was a really, really good offensive line. And that's why I've been enforcing so much with the Bengals that you invest in offensive line. Deduct some pay off those skill pretty boy position, fat cash, some fat bacon cash. I can't stress it enough, Dan. But you look at Joe Burrow and that mentality that he has. It's very similar to that Kobe Bryant mentality, that Black Mamba mentality of I'm not going to get outworked. Very similar to kind of how Peyton Manning was. Peyton Manning used to scold receivers if they did not run fast enough, if they didn't cut the route right at 8.5 yards, if they cut it at 8 3/4 yards, he would scold them. He would scold his coaches if they didn't have the play called to him in his helmet. I think Joe Burrow truly does not care if he's loved or not. And I don't mean like he's like what would be the good word for it? Like he's not trying to be the bad guy or the villain of the NFL. I think he's genuinely like, I'm on a mission to win, and I only want people around me who are going to win. And that's how Peyton Manning was. That's how Kobe Bryant was. You can argue that's how LeBron James LeBron James is right now. So it's that mentality that he has of I don't care who's around me, as long as they play to the best of their ability, we're going to be able to do some special things.
Well, and I'm not a Bengals fan anymore, but I'd be lying if I said I'm a Browns fan, unfortunately. But I'd be lying if I said I'm not excited for this pick, because, you know, all these things you mentioned about Johnny Manziel and Baker Mayfield and Andy Dalton going to these Ohio teams. You know what they didn't have in common with Joe Burrow? He wasn't from Ohio. And I know they weren't from Ohio, which I know doesn't mean a whole lot, but when you have a little bit of pride in your state, like you played for UK and you're a Kentucky boy, there's some pride there. Joe Burrow played in Athens, Ohio, which, let me tell you, not the best part of Ohio.
Right.
I'm from Dayton. I'm saying that. But then he went on to play for the home state team. He played for Ohio State, went on to play somewhere else, but he's finally coming back to redeem his spot in his home state. So I think there is some pride for him to not just lift this Bengals organization up, but lift the state up as well. So I'm all about Joe Burrow. So let's see what we'll be excited to see what happens with Burrow this upcoming year if we have it, because they're talking about with this Corona stuff if there is going to be a season or not, or how limited it's going to be. But we'll have to see what will all happen with that. Hypothetically, let's say there is a 2020 NFL season, and all these players who got picked this year, they're going to have the opportunity to play and represent the jerseys that they're wearing as well. And so we're really excited to see what some of these guys can do, and I want to break them down one by one. And I keep saying we're going to talk about UK players. We will talk about UK players, don't you worry. But there's a lot to unpack here of different players. And one big Kentucky football story that came out of this draft didn't involve a UK player at all, but it involved an Alabama player. Jedrick Wills out of Alabama, who actually played high school football here in Kentucky at Lafayette. He was the number 10 draft pick to the Cleveland Browns, one of the highest draft picks for a Kentucky player. They actually said he was the highest pick in the NFL draft from Kentucky since Tim Couch in 1999. Correct. So it's kind of awesome to see. So even though he played at Alabama, we still consider him to be one of our own. But tell me, what do you think about Jedrick and his pick, how high of a pick he got from him being here in our backyard?
You knew it. You knew it since he was in high school that he was going to be a big-time player. I mean, it's so hard in offensive line play. And first of all, major shout-out to all the high school football coaches in the state of Kentucky that have now developed a pipeline when it comes to offensive linemen. I mean, you have had some really, really good offensive linemen coming out of this state. Another one that you're going to have to watch for is a Scott County boy that's that's playing at Virginia Tech right now. Started as a true freshman at center. He'll be a guy that's going to be in the NFL draft. You had Drake Jackson, Landon Young, Mason Wolf, who just graduated this year also. You have a slew of offensive linemen coming out of this state. And the way that high school football coaches within the state of Kentucky have taken the sport seriously now to the point to where you're getting national attention. You're getting national – oh, shoot, major shout out to Walker Parks and Jagger Burton also. Jagger Burton, who's probably going to be top 10, ESPN top 10 recruits. And then Walker Parks, who just committed to who's going to be going to Clemson next year. So you've got just a bed of just great offensive line talent here. But Jedrick Wills, the way his ability to play so light on his feet, especially in his pass protection as a tackle, is so amazing. Because you think of offensive linemen and the negative stereotype, and it's very discriminatory if you ask me, is that offensive linemen are all dumpy. They're not quick on their feet. They just get up there and just lay themselves onto people. It's basically all they do. Yeah.
Fat man be wall. That's what offensive linemen are, right?
Fat man be wall. Fat man do good. Fat man do real good. You really want to know, if there's someone listening to this that really wants to know the game of football, like really want to know it, everything starts within the line and everything starts with that center. And it's weird because I get borderline emotional talking about it, is the poetry of an offensive line grooving and talking to each other when a defense is moving. When a defense is moving, they're trying to set up something, whether it be a corner hammer from the outside, a strong safety blitz coming in with a shark slant in, whether it is a Mike and a Will X up the A gap, whatever it is, and being able to communicate it and then stop it. Jedrick Wills has that football IQ that's able to pick that up to where he's able to communicate to his center in a screaming stadium, two guys away from him, be able to communicate a change in the defense, get it communicated, and then pick it up. A 315-pound man going up against a 150-pound guy in a speed test on the edge to protect the blind side of his quarterback, and being able to stop him and throw him to the ground and get the little kid out of the big boy sandbox is something absolutely unreal and something so much fun to watch. his entire career at Alabama, 0 sacks. 0 sacks.
Wow.
And that's with Tua as your quarterback, a heavy passing quarterback. And you allowed 0 sacks as a starter. That's unreal. That's unreal. To put it in perspective, Logan Stenberg, who is from the state of Alabama, went to play at UK, only allowed 1 sack in his entire career. And it all comes down to how light Jedrick Wills is on his feet and then how heavy his hands are. When I mean heavy, the ability that he's able to just punch the soul out of you when he goes into his kick set to strike, and just able to knock guys into position, into the lane that he wants them to go into. Jedrick Wills will be the next Joe Thomas, which Joe Thomas was the infamous offensive lineman from the Cleveland Browns who played over 10,600 consecutive snaps. And that is a big freaking deal to play that many consecutive snaps.
As a diehard Cleveland Brown fan, I am so excited to have Jedrick Wills coming to Cleveland. I'm even more excited that he's like a Lexington guy. I didn't even know up until last week when I talked to Angela that he was from here. So it has a little more passion to it. And God knows Baker Mayfield needs all the help he can get, all the protection he can get up there as well. So
exactly.
Come on, Jedrick, help us out here a little bit. So, but finally, Max, we've talked all about Joe Burrow, Jedrick Wills, and everything else in between, but we're finally going to start talking about this UK draft class and starting it off strong. I know this year's draft class wasn't as, I guess you could say, strong as last year's. We didn't have as many players go this year, but we still had some stuff that was worthy to talk about here. In the 3rd round, 80th pick overall, Lynn Bowden goes to the I'm sorry, bad habit I got to break. The Las Vegas Raiders. He goes from Lex Vegas to Las Vegas. Lynn Bowden's going out there. So tell me, what do you think about this pick with Bowden going out there, especially after they drafted a hell of a lot of receivers already?
My biggest thing right now is I really hope that John Gruden doesn't ruin him. Out of all the places, I was like, please do not go to Oakland. And, of course, that was the place that he went to. I think he's going to be a great fit wherever he goes. There's been talks that they're wanting to move him to running back. That's not a good idea. I really hope they don't do that. But if they do, Lynn Bowden's going to take it like a champ and do it.
Why isn't that a good idea for him to go to running back?
It's different. Basically, the style of ball that he played, physical it may be, yes. He was an extremely physical quarterback running the ball. Or if you just want to say a wide receiver running the ball, whichever way you want to put it, that's extremely physical and a daunting task, to say the least. However, there's something different when you've got the option to either hand it off or bump it to the outside. And when I say bump it to the outside, that means making that cut to planting your foot and taking it to the outside towards the sideline. Give yourself an opportunity to run out in the open. It's real difficult to do that if you're just a straight up running back and you're told to run it up the middle. Counter, pulling guard, follow the pulling guard up the middle. Power, run it up the middle. Maybe an outside zone here. All of a sudden, you've got a defensive end that's sealing off a Bud Dupree, sealing off the outside. All of a sudden, you have to cut it back inside, and there you are back up the middle again. That is an extremely, extremely harsh way to put mileage on your body. Running backs are the only position on the field that is measured by how many hits they've taken. It's like everyone in the NFL, when they're watching a running back throughout their entire career, whether it's college or NFL, it's just they've got a little clicker, and every single time he takes a hit, that's already just That's $10 off of him, $20 off, $30 off of him. It's just clicking away. And for a guy like Lynn Bowden, whose body's not naturally built to be a running back like that, to be that quote-unquote bruiser, that's a daunting task to ask of him. Now, use him universally, use him as a receiver, use him as a running back, use him as your wildcat quarterback. Absolutely, have at it. Even put him in as a back a couple of times. Absolutely, let's do it. But all the stuff that if they're just strictly asking him to be a running back, which I wouldn't put anything off of I wouldn't put anything past John Gruden to do nowadays. I just hope that they don't do that to him. You need to use him as either a receiver or use him as that utility knife, as almost like a Taysom Hill is down at with the Saints. I would love to see that out of Lynn Bowden, to turn into that.
I've also seen some stuff where they said his bread and butter might be specials as a returner, like a Josh Cribbs or a Cordell Patterson. What do you think about that?
Absolutely. I think the first day you have him fielding punts or fielding kickoff, he's a guy that's absolutely electric. Every single time he touches the ball, the place takes a big breath because you know something's about ready to happen. I think 100%. That's day one. You've got to get that ball in his hands and let him do something special. Kind of like how Randall Cobb was his first year at Green Bay. They decided to put the ball in his hands on kickoff. His first time fielding a kickoff return, he took it 108 yards for a touchdown.
Awesome. Well, we're excited to see what's going to happen here with Lynn Bowden in Las Vegas. Not Oakland, but Las Vegas. It's hard, man. I still call the Chargers. I still call the Chargers San Diego, so I'm working on it.
I just don't even talk about the Chargers, honestly.
Fair enough. Well, we're not going to talk about the Chargers. Let's start talking about the Lions, though. And their fourth-round pick was a big one, too, as they got Logan Sternberg out of UK as well, the guard, going in the fourth round, 121st pick overall to the Detroit Lions. And Detroit's pretty known for drafting some Kentucky guards. You lived with one of them once. So tell me about this pick with Logan going to Detroit.
I think it's a great fit because Detroit's offensive line has really lost that nastiness that they used to have when Larry was there. When obviously when Larry went free agency and decided to go with the Saints and bank. Yeah, and yet he still hasn't thrown any of that cash my way. That was the only reason I was a roommate with him.
Is he paying for Trevino's wedding? I know he's one of the groomsmen. He should be, right?
He should. Funny story about Larry. He got a signing bonus and got a really, really big bonus, but he is so frugal with his money. I'm shocked. When I saw how much he paid for his house, which still by NFL standards is very, very modest, but I was absolutely shocked when I saw it in New Orleans, and I was like, "Yeah, the wife made the decision on that one. Larry did not make the decision on that one." I mean, the dude is not a big spender. He's not a big spender. He's very modest in everything that he does, and he's extremely frugal. I mean, the dude's got a strategy for when he retires. He saved so much of his money that he's made that he's not going to have to work a day in his life if he doesn't want to. But he's already figured out how he's going to lose his weight. He knows the strategies that he's going to take financially to play the market a little bit. I mean, the dude has thought out everything, and the dude's just very, very, very intelligent. But back to Logan. Logan brings that nastiness. Logan is one of the most amazing offensive linemen I've ever seen. He's also one of the most frustrating because of the amount of penalties that he gets on him. But he's gotten those because everyone knows he plays so nasty. And when I say nasty, I'm talking about when the whistle's blowing. Usually the rule is when you blow the whistle, you stop. This is a guy that goes through the whistle. So the ref has to blow the whistle several times to get him to stop playing. And you see it in his game. You see it how the way that he blindsides and gets a whole slab of ribs on defenseless defenders that are already locked up on offensive linemen and pass protection. Oh, my gosh. I mean, he's the king of it. I think he's going to bring a great mentality into that offensive line room in Detroit.
Do you think that control issue you kind of mentioned is why he slipped so far down the draft?
I think that's a really good question. I think that does play a little bit of a role in it. Does he have the self-control to because think this was an issue that another Detroit Lions player had, Ndamukong Suh.
Mm-hmm.
Ndamukong Suh had an issue of self-control and allowing the emotions on the field to get the better of him. I don't think that was the biggest thing. I know that his 40 time wasn't as good as what was expected. And he's another thing also, and it's weird. It's weird how the NFL looks at just how your body's built. And one thing that they were hesitant on was his height as a guard. He's 6'6". That's really tall for a guard. 6'4" is usually the range that you want for a guard. Put in perspective, Larry's only about 6'1.5", 6'2", if that.
Really? I didn't know he was that small.
He's short. He's shorter, and that played a role.
I'm sorry, Larry, if you're listening. I didn't mean to call you small, though. Don't hurt me.
But that plays a role in it because they're like, well, if he's short, that means other defensive linemen are going to be able to jump over him, be able to jump up over top to be able to try to block the ball from a passer. You had that same issue with Drew Brees because Drew Brees is only like 5'9", 5'10", something like that. He's short as all get out. And then you get a guy like Logan Stenberg who's too tall for the position. He's 6'6". He should be a tackle, but he doesn't have the footwork to be a tackle. Maybe 3 years from now from the league, but right now he doesn't have the footwork to be a tackle. So it's like, well, we've got to keep him at guard. He's too tall for guard. Now, is Matthew Stafford going to be able to look over Logan Stenberg? Because that's the whole thing. Can your quarterback look over them? Because I know always Peyton Manning only wanted a shorter center. He always wanted a shorter center because that way it opened up the game a little bit more. When he went to Denver after he didn't have Jeff Saturday anymore at the Colts, he went to Denver and went with Vasquez. But Vasquez, they had to bring in from guard to center because he was the only one that was 6'1". He was short, and that was the reason why Peyton wanted him.
We're excited to see what happens to Logan Stenberg as he goes out to Detroit here, and hopefully he has some similar success to Larry out there. But that really did it for this draft as far as UK players go. They went in the third and fourth round, and we didn't see any other players come off the board after that. But we did see a few players go free agent as well. So I just want to go one by one through some of these free agents to get your thoughts on them. I know we've kind of talked about them a little bit before, but just to get a few more thoughts on them as well. So
Ahmad Wagner, he's a guy that is probably, if Terry Wilson never got hurt, he would have been drafted because he would have had some more time to get some connections to him and be able to get a few more passes, a few more touchdowns, a lot more stats to show. He did not have a lot of film to bring to the table, but he's a physical blocker. He's a big man. I mean, big man. That's why they called him Ahmad Flagner, because he drew the flag almost every time. And going against a defensive back from the NFL, yes, he's going to be able to cover you because there's no one that's truly open in the NFL. The level that there's someone just wide open every time or a busted coverage, that doesn't happen anymore. It's truly the NFL, there's never an open receiver. So it's how you're going to out-physical someone on a 50-50 ball. And that's what I believe Ahmad Wagner is going to be able to do. I think out of him, Calvin Taylor, TJ Carter, I think both Calvin Taylor and TJ Carter, who went undrafted as well, will make teams. I think Ahmad Wagner, though, is going to be a guy that's going to be in the league for a long time because of his ability, because he's got a lot of unproven potential that us as UK fans we've seen, but because people with an unbiased opinion look at it and go, I'm not seeing enough film to believe it quite yet.
Let's talk about Calvin Taylor next. He went to Pittsburgh. So what do you think about that?
I think defensive lineman free agents from Kentucky have had a lot of success at Pittsburgh. You look at a guy named Farrington Huguenin, also known as Pharaoh by his teammates, had a very lucrative career for about 4 or 5 years with Pittsburgh. Had a great career there. Did a great job. And Calvin Taylor is a guy that just he's got what I call the South Carolina kind of presence. A lot of South Carolina defensive players back when Spurrier was there, he'd like to get real long arms, real long legs, and just overwhelm you just by their size. Just not just girth, but just their size. And that's something that Calvin was able to do. He was able to overwhelm guys with the length of his arms, how powerful his legs were, and to really cause mayhem in the backfield. And I think he's going to be a guy that's going to be able to show that he belongs and he can be one of those supporting role guys. You look at a guy like Corey Peters, who used to play for UK back from I think it was 2006 to 2009 or 2005 to 2009. And he's a guy that's still in the NFL. Also another guy that was in the NFL for a long time, went undrafted, but played for I think it was 2 different teams, the Raiders and the Cardinals, is Ricky Lumpkin. Ricky Lumpkin made a great career as a supporting role defensive lineman, made a lot of money playing in the NFL, being that supportive role defensive lineman and being one of those big run blockers. So I think Calvin Taylor's definitely a little bit more size on him, a little bit more girth on him. He could definitely do that.
And the last guy that we got to talk about here as well is TJ Carter going to Arizona. So what do you think of TJ and his potential out at Arizona under Cliff Kingsbury and that bougie-ass mansion he has?
Gosh, to have that much money.
That's all the Texas Tech severance money, by the way. I just want to point that
exactly. That was not from what he's done in Arizona. Let's be for sure to say that. And we could talk a whole segment about that house. But TJ Carter, basically take Calvin Taylor's name out and put TJ Carter back in. And it's basically the same thing. If he gets some size on him, but the thing about him, he's a great penetrator in pass protection. And he does a great thing, Dan. A lot of defensive linemen that are real successful in pass defense is when they're shooting a gap, basically doing a stunt or shooting a gap. What they do is turn their hips, turn their shoulders to where basically they're now than they are actually the field and facing the blocker. To where you're able to do that as an offensive lineman, you don't know what to do at that point. Because once you do that, it causes an offensive lineman to open his hips. And if you cause an offensive lineman to open his hips, it's game over. Because any move you make at that point, an offensive lineman's too big to be able to recover from it. And so that was something that TJ, that was his bread and butter, was being able to get skinny, turn his shoulders, and make an offensive lineman open up his hips to where either he's going to go ahead and just take that lane and cause pressure, or do a stunt, stab the dude in the back and with his elbow and come in and get the sack. And he did a great job of that. So I think he's another guy. Insert or take out Ricky Lumpkin's name, take out Calvin Taylor's name, and put in TJ Carter. It could be the exact same thing.
Well, that's kind of some exciting feedback to get about Carter out in Carolina, or Carolina Cardinals.
And then one other thing as well, the only reason UK had 2 people that got drafted, 5 people overall in the draft, is you also look at the offense and the defense returning starters for UK this year for 2020. They returned 20 of 22 starters. So, yeah.
This team's going to be good this year, hopefully.
Yes. So the year before, like when Josh Allen and all of them got drafted, there was zero players from UK that was drafted that year. Zip, nada, none. And then the next year they win 10 games. This year they only have 2. And they return a whole lot more starters than than the team that won 10 games.
Including hopefully Terry Wilson. I've seen his tweets about him kind of getting himself ready. So, man, I'm hoping to see Terry back on the field, man. I think he's ambitious right now.
Oh, yes. But I will say this. If the year that UK could potentially win the SEC East, your only competitor is against really Georgia, this is a year that you could win the SEC East. You could win 10 or 11 games, and it literally takes a pandemic to ruin that season. It's probably the most Kentucky football thing I've ever heard in my entire life.
Man, so we've had the opportunity to talk about a couple of the undrafted free agents that went in this past draft as well. But one guy whose name was not mentioned in this undrafted free agent list or the draft at all was Kash Daniel. And I know when we did our show last year, you talked about Kash as being one of those guys that could potentially have an opportunity in the NFL, whether it be in the draft or free agency. And he had a pretty rough year just with everything going on. And I wanted to get your thoughts on what you think about Kash kind of being, at this point in time of recording, kind of snuffed at an opportunity.
I think the biggest thing that would have helped him was his pro day.
Mm-hmm.
And once I saw that he wasn't going to get a pro day, I did not think that there would be a team that would take a risk on him. And that really hurt me to see that, especially as a Kentucky boy and a guy that comes from the 606 that has so much pride in his state, in that community for Eastern Kentucky, to just get the chance, to just get the opportunity to do that for that part of Kentucky and kind of get snubbed for it. Granted, during some very unprecedented circumstances, but to still get that opportunity and to get snubbed of it. But Kash Daniel is a smart human being. Kash Daniel is a guy that has figured out how to make his name pretty lucrative, whether that be through his connections with Barstool Sports, with the WWE.
Hell yeah.
He's going to be fine. Whatever he finds, and I pray to God that he figures out what he wants to do, because I know that transition for student athletes, going from a student athlete to going to the real world, is extremely rough. But I feel like Kash Daniel is a kid with his head on straight, and he's going to have the opportunity to really figure out some things and be able to figure out what he wants to do next, and knowing that he's more than football.
It was definitely difficult to see, because I felt like if there was anyone last year people wanted to root for, was Kash Daniel, because he was like we talked about Joe Burrow. Ohio boy returned to Ohio. Ohio boy representing Ohio. Kash Daniel was a Kentucky boy representing Kentucky. And
exactly.
Yeah, and it's probably sad to see, and I know there was a lot of circumstances that kind of led to this as well. You know, he got concussed during the Georgia game. He had some criticism against him too for what happened in the Florida game as well, which personally for me, maybe he took that a little more to heart than he needed to. Then, just more and more things started to pack on him, where I even read an article the other day. He almost thought about quitting football altogether. And, now we're at this point. But I'm hoping, he still looks at the bright side. He has a lot of opportunities. He's made his name big enough that he can go anywhere he wants, whether he wants to go work in Lexington, if he wants to go work for Barstool, if he wants to go work for Vince effing McMahon. He has opportunities all around himself. So I'm hoping for the best for him, man. So personally for me, because we've talked a lot of wrestling on this show recently, I kind of want to see him go down to WWE and see what he can do down there. So Cash Money Daniels.
Yes, Cash Money. I'll say this, and not just for Kash Daniel, but just for a lot of football players. You invest so much into this game. I mean, you invest a lot, and I think a lot more than what people can really imagine. The amount of the mental and physical toll it takes on your body for a sport that you love unconditionally. I mean, to put your body through hell and deal with the repercussions that I'm still dealing with. I've been out of football for, it's 2014.
About 5 or 6 years, right?
6 years. This will be my 6th year out of football, or 5th year out of football. And I'm still dealing with the repercussions of some of my decisions for continuing to play. And you love football so much, but football does not love you back. And very rarely do you get to ride off in the sunset in the way that you want, and in your career the way that you want. Football is vile. Football is mean. Football is heartless. And football will tell you that they love you, but it's very conditional of how they love you. It's only if you bring success to it. And the game itself, I love, and I regret nothing in playing. But I also have the maturity now to look at it and go, the game does not always love you back. And how your story ends in the game 90% of the time is not how you envisioned it, what you imagined, or what you hoped for. Because you can be a guy like me, 5 years removed, the game still goes on, and the game forgets you, because eventually someone else takes up your jersey, someone else marches out on the field, and then at that point you're just a memory at that point. Not to get too depressing about it, but it shows the importance after the game is done.
Who is wearing number 64 on the team now? Because I know Bunchy was, but who's wearing it now?
It wasn't Bunchy. It was George Asafo-Adoji. And once I saw that he took my number, I was like, oh, yeah, I'm definitely getting forgotten at this point. I'm like, yeah, I'm done.
Way go,
Which, I mean, the bar for 64 was really low. It was really low on who had it basically you? No one. So the bar was low. The bar was really low. So basically for George, all he had to do was start 4 games, basically at that point. And then he started as a freshman and started for 4 years straight. It was like, yeah, George Asafo-Adoji is 64. I just have George Asafo jerseys just hanging up in my office.
There's like, what's this Godby name on the back of Big George's number? It's like, oh,
who's Gooby?
Who's Gooby? who is this punter that we speak of?
Why does a punter have 64 as a jersey? What a dweeb.
Well, Max, we've had a fun time kind of talking about a number of different players, both from UK and not, on this show. Before we get going here, I do want to ask you about this upcoming season, if we still have it. Who are some guys that you are excited to watch, and who do you think we should be looking out for in the upcoming draft from UK in the next couple of years as well? I know DeAndre Square is a guy that I hear a lot about.
Oh yeah. DeAndre Square, if he has a good season this year, he'll go to the draft after this season. I mean, the kid is so. You don't see linebackers like that are just so physical, yet so quick on their feet, able to recognize pass and be able to back up into pass protection and to pass coverage that quickly. DeAndre Square. Chris Oates is another guy. Chris Oates is going to be a heck of a linebacker, and he's going to be that cash. He reminds me a lot of Courtney Love, and his style of play. obviously Terry Wilson. Terry Wilson is going to be an absolute – I think it's just going to be dynamic to watch him and kind of go on this vengeance tour. Cavassier Smoke and Christian Rodriguez in the backfield. That's going to be a very deadly matchup because you got two running backs with very different styles, and then Terry Wilson, who's very balanced. And then you've also got A.J. Rose also. Sorry, no disrespect to A.J. Rose on that one. And then my most excited, the two players that I cannot wait to watch is Drake Jackson and Landon Young. And I think this will be the year that you're going to see a offensive lineman from the University of Kentucky go in the first round. And I think it's going to be either Landon or Drake.
Those are some big expectations for you, man. So I'm hoping we get to have the opportunity to watch all these guys succeed this year in the 2020 SEC UK football season. But Max, I want to say, man, it's been awesome to talk to you on this show, man, especially with just everything going on. You know, it's awesome just to try to connect with people that I love and who I respect. And I know we take some ribs at each other from time to time, but man, I can't tell you enough. This show would not be what it is today without what you've contributed to it. So thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate it.
Oh, pish posh, Dan. You're a heck of a host. And this podcast is absolutely fantastic and extremely, and I use the term interesting in the highest regard. It's a very interesting podcast with a very interesting approach, and I think people see that, and that's why people enjoy it.
Max, where can my listeners find you out online if they want to keep up to date with you?
Well, I host a podcast called BBN Chalk Talk, a sports. Yeah, it's. But we are starting back up. We're trying to shoot for a May release date to where we will finally get in full tune. But we've made our internet presence alive again, mainly with food talk. You can follow me at Godby64, where I get in so much shenanigans on Twitter and have, as my mother-in-law says, I have really strong takes on things that don't matter. And then if you want a more professional approach, you can also go to my LinkedIn profile.
There you go. I've never had anyone promote their LinkedIn profile before, so more power to you, man. So
it's all about diversifying your portfolio, man.
Well, man, if you want to learn all about bug extermination and maybe sometimes chips, go to his LinkedIn profile. But till next time, my brother.
Hey, man, thanks for having me on, man. Really appreciate it.